Hello and welcome to Break Harp. My name is Zuzanna, I am a harpist and harp teacher, and this is my weekly video series for anyone who wants to learn more about playing the harp. In today's episode I'm going to talk about strings and, to be more precise, about the spare ones that you may need when a string breaks on your instrument. Also answering the questions of those of you who wonder whether they need a full set. As always, in the description below this video, you will find the link to download the episode notes, including some string charts, as well as the episode transcript, for those of you who prefer to read. Leave your name and email and you will get access to all Coffee Break Harp resources. And now, back to the main topic. As we all know, harps are rather expensive instruments. Perhaps you have already invested a considerable amount of money into renting or buying one, paying for the lessons, purchasing music, and now you're at the point when you're wondering whether you also need to have a spare set of strings on hand whenever one breaks. Everyone's situation is different, and today we will consider a few different scenarios. Let's dive in. You may have just started playing the harp, or maybe you have been learning to play for quite a few years. What we will consider today is not as much the level of experience, but in what situations you may happen to use your harp. First question: are you planning to take any exams on the harp? If the answer is yes, I would say that you do need a set of spare strings. You don't want to end up in what is a potentially stressful situation with the added stress of trying to figure out what to do if a string breaks. Most examiners, sadly, will not be able to adjust your mark to take this into account, so it's best to be as prepared as you can be and have the full set of spare strings with you. Second question: do you play with others, for example with a local orchestra or a school ensemble? If the answer is yes, again, I would advise that you purchase a full set of spare strings. You want everyone, including yourself, to play as best as they can, and certainly you wouldn't want to jeopardize everyone else's performance by not being able to play some of your part. When playing in a group, you're part of something bigger than you and your instrument, and I think it's really important to value everyone else's time and effort by doing the best that you can. Next, are you performing in public? And then the next follow-up question: are you being paid and how? If you're performing in public for a set fee, for example at a wedding or a function, you should definitely invest in a spare set of strings, and the height of your fees should reflect the need to cover that expense. You shouldn't have to adjust the repertoire in order to avoid playing an invisible string that just broke. Of course, things do happen, and if a string pops halfway through the bride's walk down the aisle, you will have to find your way around that. But I believe that being prepared and having a full spare set of strings with you is a mark of your professionalism here. So if that string breaks a little bit earlier, then you can have it with you and replace it. Things may be slightly different if you're busking or playing for tips. I would argue that you will still feel more confident and at ease, knowing that you will not need to decide whether to stop and pack up your harp when a string breaks, or having to improvise navigating your way around the missing string. But in this case, I would say this is up to you and your improvising skills. If you answered no to the previous questions, here's one last thing to consider. Where is the nearest store that you could buy strings from? And how long will it take for you to get a replacement string from the moment you order to when it arrives at your home? Depending where you live, it may be as easy as popping by the shop on your way to the city center, or it may mean waiting for a few days or weeks before your order arrives in the post. Sometimes it can be longer if the store needs to source the strings for you, so you may need to take into account possible delays. Do your research and find out what places you can buy your harp strings from before you need to. Then you should ask yourself, is the waiting time okay for you? And also, what about the shipping costs? While it is rather hard to predict how often the strings on your harp will break, a lot will depend on the materials. If majority of strings on your harp are made of gut, you will likely need to replace them more often than nylon or synthetic strings. So you may also want to consider whether the costs of shipping single strings will not add up at a higher amount over time, and how much money are you really saving by not buying a full set. I highly recommend that you keep track of what strings you had to replace and when. This will allow you to notice which strings break more often than others and how frequently you would need to make a big string order to replace whatever you've used up. Of course, buying a full set of strings, even for a small harp, is a considerable expense that you may not be ready for just now. So, I've got a few tips for those of you who are looking for ways of reducing the cost or spreading it over a longer period of time. If you have some time before a public performance that you will need a full set of strings for, and you would like to only buy a part of a set to start with, I would suggest that you begin with purchasing the higher strings, which tend to be cheaper and which usually break more often. In case of smaller harps, it could be 1 or 2 octaves and maybe a little bit more for larger instruments. In case of a pedal harp or a larger lever harp, you may want to purchase the strings from the 2nd and 3rd octave, as you probably will use them more often and therefore they may break more frequently than the strings at the very top of the harp that you don't play that much normally. If you need a full spare set very soon, you can reduce the cost by omitting some of the strings that can be replaced by others. I personally do not use this method, but I heard about it from other professional harpists, so I am going to share with you how it works, and then you can decide for yourself. For example, according to this method, it is fine to use an E string to replace a D, or to use an A string to replace the G. This means that you don't have to buy the D or G strings when purchasing a full set. Remember that this is supposed to work for a higher string to be used in place of the lower string and not the other way around. And of course it won't work for the colored strings, so make sure that you get all your C's and all your F's. Also remember that every instrument is different, so you may want to check about this with your harp's manufacturer before you follow that method. Another option could be renting a set of strings from the nearest harp shop if they offer that, or another harpist who is local to you, so you may want to research these options too. Depending on where you live, this may or may not be possible, so allow plenty of time to do your research. I hope this episode was helpful. Let us know in the comments. Do you have your set of spare strings already? Did you do anything else apart from tips shared here to reduce the costs? Do share your tips with others. I will be looking forward to seeing your replies and of course to being here with you again next week. I'm wishing you all as few broken strings as possible, and when they do break, may they do so only at convenient times. Take care for now. Bye! First question. No, how do you pronounce question? That's the way they do. Don't touch the mic. Ouch. Yeah. And don't put strings into your eyes.
Question.
Perhaps you have already invested a considerable amount of money.